We're going to focus now on factor by grouping. Now, factor by grouping is usually done when we have a set of 4 terms, so a polynomial with 4 terms. All right, and you'll see special cases when this happens. And here I've made out the steps for them. We want to make sure our function is in standard form with the exponents going from biggest to smallest. We're going to put parentheses and group these terms, the first 2 terms, the second 2 terms, a little bit of GCF, and then we'll go from there. So let's take a look at our first example and apply the steps that we're going to use today. So the instructions are going to be factor the following. So 12x to the third minus 21x squared plus 28x minus 49. All right, so we do see that there are 4 terms. The first thing we want to check is it in standard form? Let's see, exponents go 3, 2, 1, and then x to the 0. So it is in standard form. Second step, put parentheses around the first 2 terms and another set around the last 2 terms. So first 2 terms, last 2 terms. And I want you to notice something I did. I left that plus sign in between. We always want to leave that in between. It's going to help us out later on. All right, so we're going to look at these piece by piece. So here's my first chunk, and let's GCF that. What do they both share? Between 12 and 21, they both share a 3. X cubed and x squared, they both can give up an x squared. That leaves me with 4x minus 21 divided by 3 is 7. X squared took out x squared, no more. X is left. Plus, let's do the same thing over here. Let's GCF this. Between 28 and 49, they both share a 7. We have an x and no x, so they don't share any more x's. So let's see what's left. 28 divided by 7 is a 4. Still have an x, minus 49 divided that 7 out, still has a 7. Next step, we check. Write what they share. So if they do share this same parentheses, if we get the same thing here, we are on the right track. What you're going to do is write that parentheses, the 4x minus the 7. Last thing we're going to do, step 5, is connect another set of parentheses, so touch it with another set, and put everything else in it. And what I mean by everything else is this 3x squared, the symbol in between, the plus, and then that 7. So 3x squared plus 7. And what we've done is used factor by grouping in order to factor that 4-piece polynomial. And that right there is your factored answer. If you don't believe it, you can check it by multiplying this out, and you should come out to that same answer up here, but you don't need to do that. That's just if you were really curious about it. Factored, remember, is when you get to 2 sets of parentheses that are being multiplied, and that's exactly what we have right here. So let's try it again. Let's say we have 8y cubed minus 64y squared plus y minus 8. All right, so let's factor by grouping because we do have 4 pieces. It is in standard form, so group the first 2, group the second 2, leave this plus sign in between, GCF each piece. So for the first piece, 8 and 64 both share an 8. Y cubed and y squared both share y squared, leaving me with 8 divided by 8 is 1. Y cubed divided by y squared is just 1y left, minus 64 divided by 8 is 8. Had y squared, took out y squared, close it up. Plus, you'll notice here, y minus 8, they don't share anything, and that y minus 8 is already what we have here. They've already shared it, but I still always need to take something out for good bookkeeping. So even if there is nothing to technically take out a 1, because isn't this still true? If I multiply this out, this is still true. So take out a 1 because I still need to put this 8y squared with something else. All right. Now more importantly, let's put the piece that they share over here. So y minus 8, and then everything else gets put in parentheses, and then everything else is this plus this 1. Can't forget about the 1. It's always got to have two sets of binomials, two pieces here, two pieces here, always binomials. Because if you didn't put that 1, let's say I erase that 1, and multiply that back out, that would not come out to this original. Still need that plus 1 in there. Okay, so even if there's nothing to factor out, take out a 1 just for good housekeeping. All right, 49 x cubed minus 35 x squared plus 56x minus 40. It is in standard form, 4 terms, group the first two, group the last two. All right, GCF, 49 and 35 both share 7. Between x cubed and x squared, we can take out an x squared. 49 divided by 7 is 7, still have an x left, minus 35 divided by 7 is a 5, no more x's, plus 56 and 40 both share a 2, both share a 4, both share an 8. 8's the biggest. 56 divided by 8 is a 7x, minus 40 divided by 8 is a 5. If your parentheses match, you've done it right so far. Write that shared parentheses. Connect another set and put everything else that's still there. Should be something plus something else. So 7x squared plus 8 goes in the second set. That right there is your factored answer using grouping. So these are all good so far because we really haven't run into one with a minus sign. So let's go ahead and see if we can find one of those. All right. Okay, so let's get a little tricky here. Let's say we have 40 x cubed plus 30 x squared minus 100x minus 75. Okay, so we want to group the first two because it is in standard form. Group the first two. Group the second two. Now this time I can't break off that minus sign. It's just going to mess with us if I break it off. Notice how I always break off a plus sign. Now technically, if I threw another plus sign right here, is the equation still true? Or is this function still true? Yes. Plus minus in a row is still minus. So I'm going to group that negative sign with the 100. So if there's a negative, group it with the number, put a plus sign in between. I always wanted to be a plus sign. It just works out a lot better for us. Let's go ahead and factor. So from the first piece, 40 and 30, what comes out is a 10. I can take out an x squared. Leaves me with 4x plus 3 plus, all right, so over here I have 100 and I have 75. What goes into both would be a 25. All right, so negative 100x divided by 25 is a negative 4x. Negative 75 divided by 25 would be a negative 3. Now I stop and check. Do my parentheses match? Not quite. They're really close, just off by a sign. So here's a future hint for you. Anytime you have this negative sign, what you want to do is factor out a negative number. See what happens if I take out a negative 25? If I take out a negative 25, this 4 becomes positive, that 3 becomes positive, and now they definitely do match. So we're going to write what they share. So 4x plus 3 is what they share. Everything else gets put in the second set of parentheses. So we've got a 10x squared, and now plus minus really just becomes minus 25. All right, so when it comes to those negative signs, things are a little bit trickier. And let's take a look at another one of those just so we get that pattern down. So for example, and we're going to look at one that has a couple extra letters in it. Let's go ahead and factor 12xy minus 28x minus 15y plus 35. So again, group the first two, group the last two, but I always want a plus sign in between. So I'm going to group it like this. So take that negative sign with the 15 this time. GCF the first bit. So 12 and 28 both share a 4. But we also see that they share an x and an x, so I can take an x out. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Took out the x, still have a y. Minus 28 divided by 4 is 7. Took out the x. Plus. Now we already said that when we have this situation, let's take out a negative number. So 15 and 35 both share a 5, and we're going to take out a negative 5. Because you'll notice here, negative 15 divided by negative 5 comes out to a positive 3y. 35, which is positive, divided by negative 5 comes out to a negative 7. And look how clean that came out. Yes, both these pieces match. Because we need to deal with that negative sign. So we've got 3y minus 7. And then everything else gets put in another set of parentheses. And that's going to be a 4x minus 5. There we go. We have two sets of parentheses. We have factored using GCF. So the thing to remember here, when it's four pieces, group the first two, group the last two, always like that plus sign in between. And if we do have a bit of negative issues, factor out a negative number and things turn to work out a little bit better.